Hi, welcome to Black Tea News. This is Christina Barr, and uh, things have gotten really, really insane. We know what happened this week at the Capitol, how there was a rally. I knew a lot of people actually went there, um, and President Trump was there, supporters were there. They were there because Congress was certifying the election. Some people believed that Mike Pence was going to not certify it and that there'd be enough maybe congressmen, other people who wouldn't certify it. I always thought that was not a good hope to have or anything, but we know that there was a ton of people there, and a fraction of those people went into the Capitol and made a mess of things. Some of those people were MAGA people, caught up in the moment. Some of those people were white supremacists. I'm sure the president would never want to be caught in head with, who went and really made a scene of things, even live stream from Pelosi's office. And then there were people who were some bad actors. People are going through the photos. A lot of those people are, um, are Trump supporters, but there are some people who are Black Lives Matter, people, as seen from like other video, like photos and stuff that people picked up. Some people were like at other Antifa rallies and stuff. So there, of course, were bad actors. I don't understand why anyone would suspect that there wouldn't be bad actors there. But anyway, after all of this, people have been outraged for days. Most people have condemned it, and there's been some whataboutism, which, you know what, I probably wouldn't have even bothered to think or compare it, or I not think, but maybe bother to be talking about the summer protests if the left would be like, well, if these were Black people, you'd be treating them different. It's like, they shot a lady. What are you talking about? They made tons of arrests at the Capitol. The FBI is looking into people are being arrested. What do you mean? Like, so that's a farce from people like Chris Evans and other people who've been saying crazy stuff like that. And a lot of people on social media, a lot of people on my thread, I've argued with some people, but not just that. You got Joe Biden and Kamala Harris saying the same thing, and instead of trying to say something like you can condemn what happened, but you can try to unify, they try to relitigate the past and basically say, what you guys did was so awful, and aren't these cops racist? Like, that's an interesting choice of things to do. I don't know why I don't know, they're just addicted to shooting themselves in the foot. If they didn't have such a racket with the media and everything else like that, they just wouldn't ever win. But they have a monster system that they've set up. So anyway, now we see that media has gone in, big tech, and they're censoring people. Hopefully I don't get censored for talking about this, but we'll see. Go to blackdnews.com. That's how we'll keep in touch in case I disappear, even in the midst of the stream. I'm streaming right now live on YouTube and Facebook. Hopefully none of my privileges are revoked, because I'm just speaking the truth right now. So the president has been banned, I'm sure you all know, from Facebook, from Twitter. His campaign emails have been taken off by the platform that they use. So if you're wondering why you're not getting any Trump emails, it's because the platform that they used stopped that. My sister was wondering why she wasn't getting any emails. So they censor them that way. Spotify won't be carrying any more Trump gear. And there, not only was he suspended, he's gone. His account is gone. And so some people are celebrating it. Actually, not some. There's a lot of people celebrating it. Some people thought that this should have been done sooner. And some people are like, he deserved what he got because he went against the terms of service all the time. But looking into actually why Twitter said that they banned the account is really, really sketchy and stupid, their explanation, because they did explain it, and they boiled it down to two particular tweets, and I will read it to you. They said, well, this is a tweet. The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, make America great again, and those are in all caps, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation point. And then not too long after that, he also tweeted, "To all those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th." So Twitter is saying that those tweets, if you take into the context of everything that's happened in the country and how people are feeling and so on, they feel that those two tweets, not tweets where he's belittled people, argued with people, gone after people, punched down with people. He has a history of very interesting tweets even prior to being the president of the United States. These are the two tweets that banned Donald Trump from Twitter. Those two tweets, because they're reading into it and have all this context associated with it. And I guess you can look at context and say that's, but they didn't even explain, like, through the years he's made a laundry list of stuff. But these two tweets, and so they said it's a glorification of violence. And what triggered that are words like saying giant, using terms like American patriots to describe supporters as being interpreted as support for those committing violent acts against the U.S. Capitol. So that's their interpretation of American patriots, or Trump using it in that particular context, which people use American patriots all the time. Now, I'm going to just remind people who are reading the dangers of reading into people's intentions like this. Not too long ago, in the Obama-Biden administration, the IRS targeted people with terms like patriot. Terms like that would trigger and cause a target for certain kind of discrimination. This is one, and that's one of those scandals that people say don't exist in the Obama administration. So words like patriot trigger them. So, and also saying the giant voice long into the future, and they will not be disrespected in any way, shape, or form, is being interpreted as further indication that President Trump does not plan to facilitate an orderly transition, and instead that he plans to continue to support, empower, and shield those who believe he won the election. Whether he tweets it or not, it's true. He will have, actually, if they had done nothing, the Capitol situation would have put a huge dent. There is a huge dent on it anyway. But doing something like this makes him a martyr. And Trump has always just been someone who filled a void. And I don't understand what people don't understand about that. Of people who felt like they didn't have a voice, of the government's not doing things, that they're too powerful and at my expense, and just a laundry list of certain things. Trump, when he overcame the competition basically by listening to people and saying, hey, these people have a need, I'm going to fill it. Oh, a lot of people are talking about immigration. That's going to be my staple. Oh, there's a lot of evangelicals. I want their support. Let me go talk to them and see what they want. Oh, you can't talk about politics because of this amendment, Johnson amendment. Okay, I'm gonna talk about that. So, he made some promises, and there are things that he promises other people made that he decided to follow through on, and he just fulfilled the need. And by fulfilling the need, he became unlike other politicians who just kind of talk and don't deliver, or may say something like, we're gonna run against this and run against that, and then they totally just get your votes and then just show no spine or no backbone. Now, there are things that Trump didn't end up doing, or didn't fulfilling, or didn't have the I guess political savvy to get accomplished and stuff, but people connected to him. So they could have let this be a bigger hit on him, and then they're like, oh, let's ban him. And let's ban some other people while we're at it. It's just not wise. It just wasn't a smart move, because prior to, let's say, this rally, which actually I don't think it was a good idea that they should have done that, personally. And I respect people's right to protest and stuff. I just personally, I think at that point they probably shouldn't have did that, but they did. So it is what it is. But people went ahead and all the stuff that happened, and so people are flipping out, and it's like, this is a bad thing. It looks like a major hit to Trump, but prior to that, he could have just did whatever and been the force behind whatever is going to happen in the next 4 years. He probably couldn't have run again, and I don't think Don Jr. or Ivanka or anything was gonna take over the helm. But there is a movement with a lot of people who still love and adore him that he could have had a lot of political power with the Republican Party and still even built that coalition. But the events that happened the other day. But then media decided to make this giant mistake. It's a giant mistake, even tactically, guys. It's just a bad mistake. And so they're deplatforming him on this, and then email and other stuff, just trying to an avalanche of things. By the way, I always thought they were going to kick him off after he was no longer president. I always believed that his account was going to be gone. So I'm not terribly surprised. It's just a really huge blunder on their part as far as what's going to happen. So the giant voice is still going to be there. People are still going to feel the way that they feel. And there's going to be someone else like Trump who fulfills that need, who's gonna be better at the game than he is, and hopefully when he's still gonna punch the media in the face, but whoever this next person might be, but they might just do it a little more gracefully and maybe a more Reagan-esque kind of way, and the media and everybody else will hate him. And even though this next person who might be on the rise might be not have the obvious flaws, I suppose, that Trump may have, the media will still hate them and say that they're worse than Trump. So 75 million people's voices and how they felt or whatever, no, they're not going to go away. And not everybody who voted for Trump obviously is a big Trump or is part of that movement or would be part of that movement. But there's a lot of people who you can't just erase them. And then people don't want to coalesce. People don't want to unify. People don't want to understand each other. And people like Joe Biden might say that, but then he demonstrates the opposite by making speeches like he made the other day, relitigating the past and trying to basically implying the Capitol Police are racist. So so those two, the giant voice, that they're reading into it, implying that he's going to empower the particular sect of people who did what they did at the Capitol. And I don't think it was really helpful for Twitter and them to delete or get rid of videos and tweets of him saying, please stop or go home or whatever. And then him saying that he doesn't, this is also crazy, him saying that he isn't planning on going to the inauguration. They are assuming that this could inspire people or signal them to say, hey, Trump isn't going to be there. It might be safe to go attack Biden. Okay. That's a crazy thing to read into. And if you think people are crazy enough to read into that, I don't know, it might not have been the best idea to suggest it. What's wrong with you people? So, but I'm sure they'll have plenty of security and other stuff that nothing like that will happen. But to really read into stuff is just crazy. So, like I said, he's banned from Twitter, gone, and other people have left. I know some people were worried about Rush Limbaugh being gone. He was someone who actually deactivated his account. I know there was some confusion. I did look it up and I did read some articles about him. He said he's just, well, he did from what I could see that he did suspend it, and Bo Snerdley was the one who I read the article from where he had tweeted it. So I'm assuming that is the case because obviously Bo would know that. So I don't think it's a good thing that they did that. Ban him there, the campaign stuff for Spotify. I think all these things are obviously slippery slopes, and you can say Trump is such a divisive kind of person that you can try to justify it that way. But that meme, I'm sure you've seen that meme of Trump pointing and he's like, they're not really after me, they're after you. And so Brandon Strzok, who founded the Walk Away movement, he started a video behind a ring light in front of a ring light and in a dark room one day, and just talked about how he was going to leave the Democrat Party and why. And he left because he realized he'd been lied to, the media manipulated him and all this other stuff. So there's all these stories of people who were like, I'm leaving the Democrat Party, I'm walking away from it, I'm leaving the left, I'm not gonna be liberal anymore, I'm gonna be conservative, I'm gonna be Republican, I'm moving for Trump, whatever. And so they had this whole movement, and he had like maybe 500,000 people on Facebook, and they just up and deleted his account. Now, it's devastating sometimes when your Facebook account is just deleted, and I obviously don't want that to happen, because if it's gone, people have so much like personal stuff connected to Facebook. So especially if something happens and you don't have any kind of warning. I don't know if they had any kind of warnings or not, but it's just a lot of life gone, because a lot of people store their memories and have for years on the platform. So at least, I don't know, a countdown warning system would probably be nice, at least as a gesture. And so anyway, they got rid of their page. And not only did they get rid of their page, they got rid of people who were like associated in like the admins and other things like that. So why? I'm not sure. They said they can't repeal it or anything like that. And so I'm seeing Twitter also banned some other people like Michael Flynn and other figures on the right, or some people kind of cuckoo too. But if people didn't break their standards, and if they're breaking their backs trying to justify that, yeah, you broke our terms of service, that's crazy. And maybe people could say, well, it's just because of Trump. Look, these major platforms work together to censor a major news story about Hunter Biden that was absolutely 100% true. And they bend it over backwards to say, oh, well, we don't do stuff that spread hacked material. We've seen hacked material spread over the internet before on Twitter and Trend and other stuff like that. But it wasn't hacked. Hacked or stolen or anything like that with the material with the laptop. And so they are trying to say, oh, we don't spread stuff like this, at the same time trying to pretend like the story wasn't true. And you couldn't, they stopped the account of the New York Post, one of the oldest countries in the paper and papers in the country, excuse me. And so they stopped their account, and they didn't want to let them back on until they deleted a particular tweet about the story. But even though the story was true, they stopped people from sharing the link and did everything they can to stop this news story that was pretty relevant. And you can't tell me it's not relevant, because if it wasn't relevant, then they wouldn't have bothered to stop the story. So don't even try to pretend that it's not a relevant story, the Hunter Biden thing. And so they did all this work to stop a true story that they knew was true too, because they didn't want it to affect the outcome of the election. So, and not only that, you have a lot of big tech people, there are certain people making decisions about what was censored and what was up and what could be up or not, that actually like came out of like positions of political authority. One person in particular used to work for Kamala Harris. So these people, obviously, in these tech industries, they have a lot of bias. A lot of these people from Silicon Valley, obviously, it's out of like California. A lot of these people are left leaning. They don't like dissent. They get triggered when there was that one guy who I think it was Google, who said something like they wanted to know how they could get more women to work in the workplace, and what can we do to that. So he decided to actually take it upon himself to answer their question. So he did all this research and wrote up a document and saying, like, women, they're basically, it was like, women are different from men. If we appeal to women this way and have they can focus on this particular kind of aspect of the tech that they like, kind of like relationships and all that other stuff, and men can do this and blah blah blah. That's how we can make this happen. And people were so triggered by it, and it caused a huge whirlwind for him. And this wasn't someone on the right, this was just someone trying to be truthful and helpful and productive and do what they wanted. And they're like, how dare you remind people that men and women are not the same. And people were acting like this particular, like, his document and his suggestions on how to help his company were demonic, basically. So tech is a really weird place, and and politicians and everybody is just pretending that reality is not the way that it is, with certain things, just to express their worldview. So what do you do when all these people who are a bit wacky and obviously biased and rooted in their bias and maybe don't like dissent in conversations are running the source of us having conversations, what do you do? Now, a lot of I've seen a lot of people unwisely try to make this comparison to, like, oh, well, they'll say they're a private company, and they'll say that they can make whatever decisions that they want, um and that it's just like, oh, Christians wanted to say that they don't have to bake a cake if it's someone gay comes into their store and wants a cake. And first of all, the reason why I think that's a really silly comparison is because most of the high I think all of the high profile cases I've heard about, like Masterpiece Cake Shop, or the person who made you with the flower shop and other stuff like that, when people came in was like, hey, will you bake this cake for my wedding? It like they're like, I don't particularly do that, but you can have anything, I'll show you anything in the store. So you come into the store and everything in the store is automatically available to you. But if you want something custom made that would require, like, more time in my artistry, which would be like an expression, which would be part of my First Amendment rights and stuff, I don't do that for things that are against my religious beliefs. And in this case, this baker, he wouldn't make Halloween cakes. He wouldn't make, like, racist, like maybe Hitler cakes or anything like that. So it was not just an exclusive, I won't bake a gay cake. He had a list of things that he didn't normally do. But he's like, you can buy anything in the store, but I'm just not going to make this particularly special thing. And that was also a case with the flower shop as well. Someone didn't want to do the arrangements. And the couple that came in were like customers. So they knew they could be serviced there, but it was this particular, like, just for the wedding, doing special arrangements for that. They're like, no, I don't. And I can't, the owner said, kind of claimed like they had a conversation, like maybe seemed like they kind of understood or something like that. And then they came back and of course got slammed with a lawsuit and stuff. And so it was funny. I was not funny, but I was reading the comments in like a YouTube story about it, when the person was talking, I think, on the lawyer on a news network or something. And so I'm reading through the comments, and you hear all these people talk about how they just want tolerance, and then the left will say, we just want tolerance, we just it's not like we're trying to crush you or anything like that. We just want to be tolerated. And the right will say, now y'all want to be accepted. And so there's always that back and forth. But I was reading the comments, and the comments were in the section was just like, well, I think that's their problem. They were willing to service them, but they weren't willing to accept them. I'm like, oh, someone admits it, huh? So, but anyway, it's not the same thing, because these people were willing to service, but they just don't want to do the particular extra distance custom stuff. So comparing Facebook and Twitter, which maybe Twitter isn't much of a monopoly. Obviously, it has no great competition, but Facebook is basically is up there. It's not the same thing with that particular comparison. So I don't think it's wise that people will keep making it. I'm sure people will. That's your prerogative, but you don't make a great case, in my opinion, but you can keep making it. But Facebook and other sites that just kind of get rid of people without like explanation, it is an issue. So going back even before this Trump thing, um, during, I don't know, May or March or when this lockdown stuff started, and people were arguing about being whether they could go to church or not. I never stopped going to church um, during the whole experience in person. But there were other states where they're really, really harsh, and some people just started to stream or whatever. And so people were saying that you can just, people aren't taking away your religious liberty, or because you can still stream it online. And so first of all, you don't get to dictate how someone can express their right to worship, and also there's a freedom of assembly. People have the right to gather together. So it's more than just religious liberty issue. It's also, right to assemble and other stuff like that. So but people were saying that you can stream it, and so that's people's excuses of why they can be tyrannical in that manner, and force you to not be able to go to church. But there was a big church in Seattle, not Seattle, but is in Washington. I don't remember what city, that my sister is following. And they have I guess a pretty decent size ministry, whatever, but she watches some of the stuff online, has read some of the pastor's books and other stuff like that. And so one day she's just like, oh my gosh, his Facebook is gone. And they didn't give them an explanation. Apparently they didn't have priors. They just up and boop, their Facebook is gone, and the pastor or whatever couldn't get into it because they got rid of his account, which he didn't really use that much. They just poof, he's gone. And since he was the one, I guess they connected the streaming and stuff too, they couldn't get into it. And so he was just saying, hey, I know it's their platform. He wasn't even complaining much. He was just like, it's not, this isn't a great situation, but I respect that it's their platform. I'm not surprised. I guess they could have seen this coming down the pipe, and they're like, but if someone could just kind of reach out or could get away to Facebook, just let me know. And so I was telling people, I was like, and actually before that happened, I was telling people, what happens when Facebook or someone says that we don't want you to be able to stream your church? Like, what if they say you can't preach about stuff that's in Leviticus because we don't want you, because saying anything about homosexuality or anything is hate speech? What if something like that happens? Or what if someone says, I can't respect your gender pronouns because I believe in biological sex, and the Bible says that shall not lie, so I'm not going to appeal to that. And we're like, well, that's hate speech. And I mean, there was in Austin, maybe I think it's somewhere down in Texas, I believe, few years ago, there was the mayor was trying to did subpoena the sermons of pastors because they wanted to know if they said anything about politically, I guess, about this ordinance that didn't pass about homosexuality and gay rights and stuff. And they wanted to know how the pastors contributed to that. So they were trying to subpoena their sermons. And so they fought back. But it's like, if the government can do that, and I guess they don't need to subpoena you if everybody's streaming online now to see what you're talking about. But if the platforms are like, hey, you can't have this voice, we don't want you saying that, then I think it's kind of still essential for people not to impede people's right to gather together. So I made that, kind of statement before that ban happened. And when that ban happened, I'm like, see, this isn't a great situation, guys. And so actually about, I guess maybe it's November or the end of October, my dad's account got banned, and he was a very political person. We had kind of told him to back off a little bit. So he hadn't been posting that much about that. He had really just been kind of focusing on church stuff. And so we do not know to date why he was banned from Twitter, from Facebook. Because he was really just preaching gospel kind of stuff at that point. I don't know if it's because he was they didn't like some of his testimonies that he was talking about. I don't know if it's because they didn't like some of his mission work of reaching people in Pakistan and converting Muslims. I don't know. We never got an answer. We never got any kind of resolution. He's never had any kind of strikes before. It was, you're banned. And Facebook will say you violated the terms, but they don't always give you the example of how. So how you appeal it, who knows? And then they're like, we will not overturn this decision. So again, I guess they have that prerogative, they can do that, but that's just not a good way to do business. Is not a good look. So I was going back and forth with people about this Trump situation, and I wasn't even talking about Trump. And I was just saying, look, they have some issues about how they decide to get rid of people, and how it can just happen in the blink of an eye. There's a big purge on Twitter right now. I don't know if it all has to do with maybe people just leaving in solidarity with the president. I don't know if it's Twitter claims that they're verifying accounts or whatever, and if they don't verify certain information, then they'll just be unfollowed from your account, or not come up as a follower. Some people are like, okay, well, why is this mass thing look like it's happening on the right and not the left? And so people aren't buying that explanation. I don't know. But some people are saying I'm losing 20,000 followers, I'm 15,000 followers, and so on. And Matt Walsh joked, and he said, I wish I was losing followers the fun way of just writing something that people don't like, which Matt is like a very irritable kind of person. Like when he's on a point that you agree with, it's like, great, go get those guys. But when he's on a point that that he seems insufferable, and it's just like, oh my gosh, Matt, let it go. So he's an interesting follow. I guess majority of the time we're on the same side, but there's some things with like, Matt, really? So I just think people should know that we're on a slippery slope. And even the ACLU, who is supposed to not be partisan, but they totally are, even they've said and acknowledge it's a slippery slope, not because they care so much about the president, but they're just like, if this kind of power can be done to him, think about the people, minorities and LGBT and other people who could, lose their availability to speak and reach across platforms. Because Trump can always find another kind of way to reach out to people. He can, set up, a new email system. They can get together with some other investors and make a new tech company. And I don't know, maybe that's something that they should look into. I don't know. People are like, oh, it's the free market. And I know I've heard people talk about him doing like something with a new news broadcast site. I don't know how effective that'll be. Would something out of him be able to become something like a new Fox News? I don't know about that. But I guess people need to try. I mean, I guess that's why I'm here doing my thing, I just don't know if him himself running that would just already be too polarizing. He could get a lot of voices, but I don't know if there's going to be a lot of like new voices to kind of change the landscape. I'm not saying he could probably do really well, but is it going to make some kind of huge culture shift? I don't know. Making someone coming and making a platform that could compete with Facebook and YouTube and all this stuff, that would be beneficial, I think, to everyone else. It's not. The crazy thing about this past year is that they've ruined and wrecked small businesses, not because of some kind of market issue, because of and not even so much because of the pandemic. People, that's the excuse. And I understand people made decisions, and some people made them in the benefit or to the best of their ability to help as many as possible. Some people continue those decisions even though they are provably stupid. And it's wrecked and ruined industries, and particularly the restaurant industry, for example. And there's some interesting restaurateurs who have talked on Joe Rogan's podcast about the dumb things they did in California, how much money they invested in trying to do outdoor dining, and then they shut them down with outdoor dining, and how someone kept complained whatever to I guess inspectors and stuff. And so they sent people out every single day to harass them. And they'd be like, you checked on this yesterday. And they're like, well, we have orders that we're supposed to check you every single day. And then they did until they closed down. So you have people who are doing an abuse of power. And so people have done all this stuff, and you're not making money unless you're like a really big chain, like a fast food chain, like McDonald's or something like that. Or unless you're a big box store, or unless you are big tech like Amazon, who has made just a windfall of money. And there's been this huge transfer of wealth from like small businesses have just been decimated through this crisis. And so there's been a big transfer of wealth from kind of the people who were maybe doing decent to just people who are kind of more on the elite side, and people in big tech. And now it's like, if you wanted to survive, you'd have to find a really good way to have some kind of tech revolution, or you'd have to be able to sell things online. You'd have to have a good delivery system. You'd have to maybe kind of figure out how to evolve your business that kind of way, right? And so we are a society that's already addicted to this new platform of being online and doing sales that way. But now we're like, oh, now online is going to censor stuff from voices that they don't particularly like. If you're someone on the right, and maybe and you were like, oh, this pandemic was so hard, but good thing I got my stuff together on Spotify. Or not Spotify, I've been saying Spotify, but it's the other Shopify. Yeah, President Trump was banned by Shopify. And let's say that's where you try to supplement your income selling stuff that way. Well, if apparently it's possible that political dissent and stuff they don't like could get you to lose your sales and your business. And so we saw the one Senator Haley who from Missouri, the senator from Missouri. I can't think of how to pronounce his name. He and I know it's simple, but I just can't think of his name clearly right now. But he lost his book deal, and people are like, oh, so sad. And people are mad at him because he voted to not certify the elections. You could say it's a stunt. You could say just so the objections are noted or whatever. But he had a book that was coming out, and the publishing company decided to pull it and not do it. And so some people are like, they have that prerogative. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's still not kind of untasteful to do something like that. And I suppose he could always just, publish it, himself and make money that way and be able to keep all of the profits. But isn't that discrimination? Yeah, but you can discriminate, I suppose, based off of political views. You can't discriminate based off of gender or race or some kind of characteristic that people can't help. And you can't discriminate based off of religion. But via the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and but there are exceptions to it, like if you have a religious objection to like I don't want to bake the cake. I talked about that earlier. So private businesses, and there's a pretty libertarian view that you should be able to just deny whatever you want in your business. And that's what Goldwater got, was controversial for, and people called him a huge racist and other stuff like that. That was obviously before my time, so I can't judge how, I guess, feelings and thoughts were, and I'm not him, but there's a libertarian opinion that should be repealed or should have never been a thing. I'm not gonna say that, but political discrimination isn't obviously a good thing, and it's obviously going to lead people to a slippery slope. I mean, we need to be a society where we can have conversations with each other, and then the crazy thing about all this stuff is that we didn't forget what happened during the summer. That's really the crazy thing about it. And what's crazy to me about Biden, Harris, and Chris Evans and all these other people bringing this, it up to try to compare the Black Lives Matter rallies. is that they acted a dying fool. It was nothing that happened um at the Capitol, and people are like, but it's different because it was the Capitol. It happened at the Capitol. Okay, so I understand it happened at the Capitol. And because all of these people who are elected officials, high and mighty, I suppose, better than everybody else, it's like, so we shouldn't have cared about the businesses that were burned down, or those people, their livelihoods destroyed, or the people who were killed and died, like Officer Dorn. Do they matter less because it didn't happen at the Capitol? So what are you people saying? I don't understand why. I mean, the media will let them get away with whatever they want to get away with, but we didn't have it. We don't have amnesia. We don't have amnesia. I remember what DC looked like. The pic, and you can go back and look at the pictures of the fires up in Washington during the protests that happened back in May. Like all the crazy stuff that happened. You can say, well, majority were peaceful. That's true, because there were a lot of protests that happened. There were a lot of demonstrations that happened. But and I've seen people say this, and my friends on my feed and stuff have said, don't compare the two, because there was a lot of peaceful protests. And I'm look, okay, and I actually said, okay, but why can't you extend the same grace toward the MAGA people? Because they've had a lot of protests throughout the past 5 years that were peaceful. There was a ton of them. There was a ton of rallies that were peaceful. There was a ton of protests since election day up until the other day that were totally peaceful. And there was a lot of people, maybe like at least 500,000 people. I don't know if they got to 1 million. A lot of people, even that I know, who went down there, that weren't even at the Capitol. They were at the rally, but they didn't go in and indulge in any of that, where they weren't in that area at all. That are peaceful. So they say they won't extend the same grace to their enemies that they extend toward people who just went crazy. And then you had Kamala Harris, our incoming vice president, who kept saying, oh, they're going to keep going, they're going to keep going, they're going to keep going. But not only that, she tweeted out links to encourage people to donate to people who are going to bail out rioters. And you could say they're just trying to bail out protesters, but the fund that they promoted, they don't care about who they bail out, and they don't care about what they did allegedly. They just don't like the cash bail system. So it doesn't matter if you were accused of killing someone, if you were accused of raping someone, which this is actually a new story. We're talking about the fund and the money that went, and they're usually like a small nonprofit, and they can do a couple things. They can't really bail out big bonds or whatever, but since they had all this cash pour in, they're like, oh, come on, murder, I'm going to pay your cash bill and put these people back in the streets. So you do things like that, and you pay for people who, the families and other stuff like that, give them millions of dollars if something goes awry, when people act a fool or won't comply. Like they fostered this insane culture that just happened throughout the entire summer, and people were arrested. Obviously not enough. Obviously not enough. There was these mass lootings and people robbing Gucci stores, and I saw someone rob a cheesecake factory. There's one woman who made out with a cheesecake. There's video of it somewhere. I liked it or something on social media. I gotta find it. But it's just, people did so many crazy things, busting up bricks on the cops' heads, throwing there was some like a metal disc or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And people laughing and punching out other people and setting stuff on fire. And then people in the media just cheering it on. These verified checkmark Twitter users like, yeah, this is what's supposed to happen, or the cries of the unheard, and just making all these excuses for the people. And not just like verified checkmark weird leftist people on CNN. Chris Como, who's like, please show me where protests are supposed to be peaceful, which the Constitution, thanks. This is like right there. But they justified the madness. they justified the madness repeatedly, and like, well, this is the movement, this is what's got to happen. Sometimes we're supposed to be uncomfortable, and people were saying, and if you complain about maybe your business being burned down to the ground or people looting and other stuff, they would say, well, you care about stuff more than you care about Black lives. What kind of madness was that? So you had a bunch of huge bad behavior that Twitter let just fly. And you know what? Twitter still allows people who are Antifa, they've been allowed them up to have platforms, communicate with each other, Facebook as well. You had uh people who were like foreign leaders who said some awful things about, you know, wiping Israel off the face of the map. Let me read one tweet I got. Our stance against Israel is the same stance we have always taken. Israel is a malignant cancer tumor in the West Asian region that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible and it will happen. That's not an incitement of violence. I just screenshot that. That is that was made in June of 2018. And I screenshot, it's still on Twitter. It's still on Twitter. The Now this was removed, excuse me, eventually, but the Chinese embassy in the US put out this article said study shows that in the process of eradicating extremism, the minds of the Uyghur women were emancipated and gender equality and reproductive health were promoted, making them no longer baby making machines. They are more confident and independent. They're up there spreading propaganda about why it was okay for their enslaved Uyghur women to be you know, for them to force like sterilization. That's crazy. uh Someone wrote me a really long comment. so so it's their terms of service. I guess the really huge problem is that there isn't a consistency with their terms of service, which there was a big thing with Steven Crowder, for example, when they were trying to get him deplatformed, and they like changed the rules of Twitter and stuff after his like Vox ad apocalypse. And some people stuck up for Steven and stuff, and people were mad that he wasn't totally gotten rid of. I think he is apparently a good lawyer, and they fight in the courts and stuff, and they win their stuff. And I think he might actually be they took away his right to, I guess, make money with his stuff, but I think that was restored. So sometimes when you fight back, you can get some results, but he's a big channel. He's not as well financed as like, you know, Young Turks or something like that, but he's still a big channel. He can fight, but not everybody else can. So if you're an up and coming person, like I suppose myself, or I guess there's a lot that you could lose really soon and not be able to kind of to rise up. And there's a lot of people who have been on social media and stuff for a while and have made livelihoods, and they're in danger of having kind of everything, the rug pull out from underneath them, and that's not good. So I think it's up to social media to really at least be fair in implicating their terms of service. But I think they also, if they're going to pull people off, they need to be fair about their process of how they do that, and explanations and reviews. Because like I said, you, even if you didn't know anything about Trump and they didn't ban him or whatever, I still don't know why my dad was banned. I still have absolutely no idea why he was. And unless someone went way back about some stuff, I don't know. The best I could guess, and this is a guess, it's an educated guess, is something I would say is probably along the lines of religious discrimination. So I don't know. But it's not good that people don't have those kind of answers, especially when so much of people's economy is like online, and not just because of it's a natural progression thing that's happened. It's become pretty much essential within the past year or so because of just the nature of the pandemic and stuff as well. So they've done all this work to transfer wealth and power. And I'm not going to say it was like totally deliberate or anything like that, but that's the nature of the decisions that were made. And now people are in danger of tech making a lot of decisions based on your political ideology and philosophy or whatever. And I'm not going to be on too much longer, but I do want to point out that Glenn Wald, who was with the Intercept, he had ended up leaving because he like founded this paper, by the way, because they didn't like him reporting or didn't want him to report on the Hunter Biden story. So he was supposed to have like freedom to be able to post what he wanted, but his people pushed back really hard on him, so he ended up resigning from the paper he like began. And so he's been someone who's been, railing against neocon. He's not I don't believe he's a conservative or anything like that, but he's someone who's like railed against like war on terror and neocons and all this kind of big government global kind of racket. Well, that way. So he's now warning people that the new kind of war that people will be waging isn't one that's going to be uh international or anything like that with terrorism, but they're going to be waging it with domestic terrorism. And they're going to, not that there's not people who need to be addressed and arrested and shunned forever in the US. There absolutely are. And those people should be dealt with, but they're going to inflame the kind of those people to access more power than they should have, in kind of patriot kind of way with stuff. And if you recall, Obama came into office when he was a candidate talking against like NSA spying, other stuff like that. But while he was president, they sure did spy. They sure did spy, drone people, other stuff like the droning thing is kind of like, that's a side point, but they spied on people. And when he got caught, he was just kind of like, hey, your Congress people know this. So the people who represent you know that we're spying on you. So man, that's kind of like what it was. And so, but he was like, we need to have a hard conversation. Like, you want to be safe? This is what we got to do. And so they were taking your data, all your phone data, not necessarily your phone conversations or listening in, but from the data of like, they could gather what your conversations and who you're talking to or whatever from the data that they had. They don't necessarily need to listen in, but from obtaining this data, and I believe like Verizon was one person that they were like getting the data and stuff from. And they make government deals and all this stuff all the time. But they were spying, and he's just kind of like, well, we need to have hard conversations. Do you want to be safe, or do you want your freedom? And there's a balance, and that is true. But you shouldn't be able to spy on people like that unless you have a warrant. And that's the truth. And they abuse their powers with some other things. And it was hard for people to always kind of bring stuff back up to Obama, that people made sure that he had plausible deniability with stuff. But when it came to that spying, just remember what they did, and just remember that they also spied on journalists. They so the media just hating Donald Trump is just like bizarre. And this was stuff that happened in the Obama Biden administration. Biden is coming back into power. So these aren't things that Biden would be against doing, or that'd be so beneath him or above him or whatever. A lot of the targeting, he hasn't signaled that he's going to be particularly super fair to people. Because there's a history there, but there's also this sense that there's no real desire to unify. And his speech the other day was not a good start. And his campaign obviously was super divisive. You want to talk about Trump? Biden's campaign was super divisive. Lots of lies. A lot of the negative things that people dislike, like people who like Trump understand that he has flaws. There's some people who are like gung-ho and kind of obsessed in a crazy kind of way, that maybe won't admit to anything like that. But most people who support him know that he has flaws, but still, given the circumstances, still believe that he was the best, chance or fit for the job or whatever. But there's a lot of there's a couple negative things about Trump that Biden actually still has himself. So like uh people don't like how Trump dealt with the press. Biden does not deal with press he does not like well. He's a kind of a cranky old man about it. And you could see on the campaign trail, they didn't ask him a lot of questions. They didn't ask him a lot of pressing questions, and there's a lot of things to press him on. And he got away with not answering like much of anything. And so did Kamala. So but the media doesn't care. They already said they're not going to cover them the same way. So there's a lot of things I think to be concerned about with the Biden administration coming in and with big tech. And I guess the question is, what do we do? And I don't think everyone jumping ship from Twitter and Facebook and stuff right now is I mean, I guess if enough people did it could hurt their bottom line, but I don't think people should just kind of retreat to their own kind of bubbles, which if people saying that people running to Parler is just retreating to their own bubbles and going to their own safe space. I've seen people say that. That is a crazy thing to say, because a lot of people are being deplatformed and pushed off, and you can be on a bubble on Facebook anyway. All you do, you can be friends with people. All you gotta do is hit unfollow. So it doesn't, you're not less of a snowflake because you're only on Facebook and you don't jump to Parler or something like that. This is just a silly narrative. And a lot of people are jumping for reasons other than they want to be in a safe space. So it's just a silly narrative. But the thing about it though is people say, oh, we'll use your free market, go build something else. But when you go run and build something else, they're like, no, we don't like that. and the Google Play Store has taken off Parler, and Apple gave them a 24-hour ultimatum saying if you don't commit to some kind of censorship, we're going to remove you from our store, which I believe Parler claimed that they'll sue if they do that. But I saw someone point out the fact that Apple is trying to defend their Section 230 privileges of being able to not be judged by what people post, by trying to kind of take away Section 230 for Parler by saying, oh no, we're going to hold you accountable if you don't censor people on your platform. So it's an interesting dynamic, but the person with the bigger bully pulpit wins. So I don't know what people are committed to doing to make the big shift. Are you gonna stop buying Apple products and get rid of your phone? What if Android? I mean, Google Play Store has said the same thing. I mean, you can still go in Parler and download it from their site and stuff, but at a certain point, there's only so much that we can get away from and not have. Like, you're gonna just totally ditch the two major phone providers that people have. So what do you do next? So the question is, how are you going to build a new, better America and compete on the free market? I don't foresee Congress. They didn't do anything before when Republicans had control or part of control. And so any talk now is just blustering, I think. So I'm sorry to have this in discussion be kind of a downer. Because and maybe we can talk and build you up kind of with a game plan, action plan on that front later. But what you can do is speak about these issues and talk to people and engage in conversations. And if people are saying stuff like, why they think it's a good thing that people are censored, just kind of explain why it would be a terrible thing. And this isn't a new thing. And this isn't even like a social media thing on college campuses like we saw years ago prior to Trump being president. Yes, these things there's life before Trump. I know it's so far away you can't even recall. That the people would crush dissent. They go to these college campuses. If Ben Shapiro or other people were there, and they would try to yell and scream and get people kicked off, and so they wouldn't be able to speak. And so Trump happened because people made a brew, and he just kind of came out of it and said, I'm your solution. It's like we conjured him into existence from the drama and the stuff that we had. And so it was just a perfect storm, and he fit the times, and someone else can um come in and do his thing, and possibly, and I believe do him better than he was able to. Um because I don't think he's going to run in 2024. I At this point I don't think he should. And so but like he said in his tweet that got him deleted from Twitter, people's aren't going to go away, and censoring them, that was a bad take, it was a bad move. But if you can censor him, what makes you think that they're not going to censor other people? And yes, Twitter, Facebook, they are a company, they can make their own rules. But it's going to start getting to slippery slopes when people are like, well, I don't want you to be able to, I don't like what you say, so I don't want you to be able to use this bank, or I don't want you to use this online banking system, or I don't want you to use this platform, I don't think you should be able to use this platform to publish a book, I don't think you should be able to. There's all these other effects that could domino. The issue, companies have gotten really too political, sports got too political. And we need people to pull away from this polarization and do business with people without all of this drama. But people, they want to punish dissent, and it's not about unifying, it's about bringing people to heel. So good luck, America. we're we're going to do our best to keep this great nation going, and to protect what we've had all these years. Republic, if you can keep it. So we got to keep fighting the good fight, and I'll keep fighting the good fight as long as I'm here. Well, not just here, but I'll keep going anyway. But if you want to help protect Black Tea News, I would recommend that you go to the site, join the email list, and look at some merchandise if that hasn't been removed. But also, you can leave a donation as well. So, guys, I thank you for being a support, for folks who stuck around to listen to me talk about this. It's a very important issue. There's a lot of stuff going on in our nation that I believe should be concerning, but we have to speak up. We have to push back. And I don't mean that in a revolutionary kind of go incite people to do stuff kind of way. FYI, don't read into that. I'm just saying, use your voices and have conversations with each other, and try, so you can try to change the culture of the atmosphere around you, and hopefully that will spread. And if we can do that and we're reunited, you can make change that way. And that's the best I think we can do for the moment. But hopefully there will be other people who will rise up to I mean, MySpace used to be the big stuff thing, and then Facebook came along and just wiped it out. And but I don't think it's just the tech that these particular platforms that's an issue. I think it's just power. If people create chaos because chaos is a ladder and they want more power. And like I said, this past year has really given a lot of power and transferred power and wealth to less people than what it's had before. I mean, so there's all these elitists who have all this power, big tech and big box stores, and people are starving. People who had thriving businesses can't don't have employees that they can't help to feed right now. So we've done a great disservice the past year or so. But we can bounce back, and we'll have to bounce back, and we'll figure out and talk about how to do that later. But I'm going to let you guys go. Please visit blacktnews.com. And I thank you, anyone who would support me and keep this going. And hopefully I'll be back, tomorrow or the next day, and be able to keep streaming and won't see censorship. And you guys know, just a little warning, that that platforms like YouTube are going to censor people if you talk about the election outcome. They did move up the date to that after what happened on the 6th. So if you say stuff to question the outcome, they'll put a strike on your account. So which FYI, I did not talk about that. In case you want to give me a strike right now, I did not talk about that in this broadcast. So good luck out there. Keep the faith. And I'll see you guys next time.